Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that his presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. We're in Mark chapter 5, and we've been tracking a couple of stories. We've seen how Jesus is on his way to the home of Jairus, the synagogue leader. And Jairus had come to Jesus and bowed at Jesus' feet because Jairus' daughter was dying. And he's begging Jesus to come and to place his hands upon her, that he knows that she'll live if Jesus just touches her. And we've seen the posture of Jairus, we've seen the faith of Jairus, and best of all, we see that Jesus is on his way with Jairus to bring healing to his daughter. But along the way, we have seen that there was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. She reaches out and she touches Jesus' garments in the midst of the crowd, and she's healed immediately. And she had spent all that she had on doctors and wasn't getting any better. And she realized, if I could just touch his garments, if I could just touch Jesus' clothing, I would be well. Such incredible faith. And Jesus realizes power has gone out from him, and so he stops and he has this conversation with his disciples, trying to figure out who touched him. And finally, the woman confesses that she's the one who touched him, and she is bowing before Jesus just like Jairus did. So both of them, we see the same posture, bowing before Jesus. We see the same faith that Jesus is the one who can make well, and indeed he heals the woman. Power had gone out from him. And he tells the woman that, daughter, your faith has saved you. Your faith in Jesus is what has saved her. Daughter, your faith has saved you. Be at peace, go in peace, be freed from your affliction. And that's where we pick the story up. And Jesus has just had this delay, if I can say it that way, in terms of he was on his way to Jairus' home, and then the whole episode with the woman happens. And now men from Jairus' home show up. And here's what they have to say. Verse 35. While Jesus was still speaking, that conversation with the woman, while Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, don't be afraid, just believe. Just want to pause there for a moment. I'm wondering what was going through Jairus' mind at that point. The people come from his home. They tell him, don't bother Jesus any longer. Your dying daughter, she is now dead. I'm sure that at some level he's thinking that, Jesus, I wish you hadn't have stopped. That woman had been bleeding. She was now well. You didn't need the conversation with her. My daughter is now dead. Would have been easy to be frustrated with Jesus. Would have been easy to be frustrated with the woman. Surely she could have continued to be sick for a little bit longer. Why did she have to reach out and touch Jesus' garments just then? Why didn't she own up to it faster? Why didn't she just ask Jesus? I mean, all kinds of ways that Jairus could have been upset with the woman. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jairus was also upset with himself. That, why didn't I get here sooner? Why didn't I turn to Jesus quicker? So it would have been very easy for him to be upset at Jesus, at the woman, at himself, in the midst of getting such horrible news. And I'm sure his heart just sunk that it was too late. But Jesus overheard the whole thing. And Jesus' words to Jairus are, don't be afraid, just believe. That same faith that you had, 30 minutes ago, keep on believing. And so we don't know what Jairus thought. We don't know what he said, but we do know what he did, that he continued home with Jesus. Jesus continued home with him along with the disciples. He didn't tell Jesus, don't bother. He believed enough to keep Jesus on the journey and to make the journey home with Jesus. And so don't be afraid, just believe. Jesus did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. And so you can just imagine all of the grieving, all of the tears, all the lamenting, the commotion going on, and probably frustration that Jairus left and he wasn't even there for the last moments of his little girl's life. And Jesus walks in and says, "What's going on? Why all the commotion? She's not dead, she's asleep." And they laugh at him. These people knew when somebody was dead, they knew the little girl was dead. And so they're thinking Jesus is crazy. But Jesus continues on. He put them all out of the house. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately she stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. So, wow. I mean, Jesus puts all the unbelievers, so to speak, outside, and he's just got mom and dad, and he's got his disciples, and he takes the little girl by the hand and speaks to her, Talitha cum, which means, "Little girl, I say to you, rise up." And she comes to life, and she's up and she's walking around, and Jesus says, "Feed her." And she's 12 years old. I think about this at Christian funerals often, and how, there's sleep, but there's resurrection. And the little girl had died, but her death is a sleep. And then one day, there's going to be the day where Jesus says, "Time to rise." And so pretty much every Christian funeral, at some point, this story comes to my mind. And like Jairus, we wish Jesus would have got there sooner. But the story tells us, the miracle tells us, that death is no match for Jesus. That Jesus can call us to life, call our loved ones to life. And that in his good time, in his right time, he will. He'll speak those words, time to rise, time to get up. And we live with that hope. We see that Jesus has authority not just over sickness, but authority over death, and that Jesus gives life. So I don't know where you might be scattered today, and I don't know who you might be grieving for, but our Christian hope is that while the world says they're dead, we know that really it's just asleep, and that resurrection day is coming. That one day Jesus will say, "Rise up," and we'll be reunited and we'll share a meal together. They said, "Get her something to eat." And so I hope that hope sinks in. Yeah, I know there's grieving and I know we miss our loved ones, but I hope that our Christian hope continues to remind us that we really do have a hope that goes beyond the grave, that Jesus is victorious even over death. And so death becomes just a sleep, and we anticipate resurrection day. Well, God bless. Have a great day, and take courage. Keep believing. Don't be afraid. Jesus will bring that reunion, that resurrection day. God bless.